I'll just start by introducing myself. Obviously, my name's Seth Martin. I'm with GoGuide, a new software company within the outdoor industry. Um, with me here is Vic Rubetsky with Eye for an Eye Guide Service out of Wisconsin. Um, thanks a lot for doing this, Vic. So I look forward to talking with you and hearing a little bit more about how you got into the industry.
Okay.
To start, I'd just love to, take it way back kind of the beginning when you first started fishing. Kind of tell us a little bit about how you got into it, how long you've been in the business of fishing and taking clients out, um, and all sorts of good things like that.
I think like fishing's been in my blood. I don't know. When we were children camping, all my other friends were swimming and I went fishing. So it's something that I've always loved. And as it progressed, I got into walleye tournament fishing and realized that, hey, Green Bay is like a world-class fishery. We should get some, guys started guiding on it. I'm thinking this is something I can do because I've fished it for so long. I grew up on Green Bay. I'm thinking, let's have some fun. Do this, take people out, let them enjoy it as well. So I guess that's kind of what got me into it.
Great. And so it sounds like you were born and raised in Wisconsin, always kind of in the Green Bay area.
Yes, I was. I used to ride, my friends and I used to ride our bikes all over to fish Green Bay. If our parents knew where we rode our bikes, we'd be in deep trouble.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Are any of those friends that you kind of grew up riding around with, you still take out fishing?
I do, yes.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's a lot of fun. We enjoy it, like I say, through grade school and high school all the way through. And when we went to college, we sort of separated, but we still went fishing together.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing how fishing can almost hold some relationships together with certain people that you meet, for
Right.
such an early point in your life. I guess, have you ever been, I'm sure you've been outside of Wisconsin. I'm sure you fished other areas in the world. Um, maybe
Yes.
tell me about some of that.
Sure. Well, being a tournament fisherman, I fished the Masters Walleye Circuit and the National Walleye Tour. So I guess walleyes are kind of my thing. I really enjoy fishing walleyes. So I've fished as far west as Devil's Lake, um, Leech Lake, boy, I'm trying to Lake Winnebagoche, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, Detroit River, Illinois River, all over for walleyes and saugers. So learned a lot of different techniques while doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I actually read that you were a competitive fisherman for over 25 years. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
How did you get into um, the competitive? Was it tournaments or I guess how did you get
Yeah,
into?
they are tournaments. Started with a group of guys that all lived in the Green Bay area. We started a Fox River Classic, and it was a spring and a fall classic, and that you just sort of get addicted to the competition and wanting to do better, right? It's not like um, when you're on the water, you're fierce competitors, but when you get off the water, you're best of friends, and that's kind of something that I really enjoy.
Right. When did you enter into your first tournament? Were you kind of in a group with a few of these, buddies that
No,
you've grown up fishing with?
no,
Or how did
just
that
my
start?
brother-in-law and I. My
Okay.
brother-in-law and I just decided, hey, let's, let's do some tournaments. And we went to some seminars, lots of seminars to try to pick up new techniques, new approaches to fishing. So then we just started doing the Fox River Classics together and then local uh, circuits that fish Green Bay and Lake Winnebago, where I guide both lakes, Green Bay and Lake Winnebago. So and they've done some other lakes in the area. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. You're talking about some of these kind of new techniques that you were learning. Can you kind of expand on that? What is that versus, I guess, what you were originally doing, and how did that kind of give you a, leverage
Well,
over some of these other competitors?
right. So like Green Bay has changed quite a bit with when we first started fishing, the water was a lot dirtier. I think because of, the zebra mussel wasn't as prevalent. And then the zebra mussel came in and it started cleaning the water up. And then the goby came in and it changed the food source or what, a goby's pretty defenseless. It doesn't even have an air bladder. So when it swims, it jumps up and it falls down. It jumps up and it falls down because they don't even have an air bladder. And they're pretty, no sharp fins or anything. So they're pretty defenseless and easy prey for the walleyes. And that's where I think that you've seen a lot of the casting and, whether you're using jigs and plastics or, uh, moonshine minnows or rip and wraps, all these techniques are to mimic the goby. And it's just a natural instinct for the walleye to attack them because they're such an easy prey for them.
Right.
And it got away from the trolling. It's more of a hand-to-hand combat. So
Yeah.
I do that with my customers. They do have to realize that you're not going to get the numbers. Great Lakes walleyes do suspend and feed on large uh, schools of shad and alewife. So you're going to catch a lot more fish trolling, but if you enjoy the hand-to-hand combat, it's a lot of fun.
Right. And that's exactly what I love through fishing. Trolling's great and all, and you could definitely get some high numbers doing so. But when you're out there actually casting, having to work for the fish and battle that fish, mano a mano, it kind of brings out a lot more excitement, at least for me.
Right.
You share that same interest.
Right. The forward facing sonar really has changed that as
Right.
well. That before you drive around and mark the fish and come back to them, now you can actually come back to them and mark them again.
Yeah. Yeah, that is amazing. And it kind of brings me to the next topic. I wanted to kind of hear how the industry and technology has almost changed since, when you first started fishing versus nowadays when they have all this new technology forward facing
Yeah,
sonar.
yeah, young men don't realize how well they have it. When I first got into competitive walleye fishing, there was no GPS mapping. There was GPS, but no global mapping. So we were on charts, figuring out latitude and longitude, just so we could plug it into our units. And basically, you were driving around visually, not watching your screen, but then coming up on these waypoints, these rock piles that you found, or extensions off of Chambers Island and stuff like that. And now you can you can literally, the mapping is so accurate now. You can literally just stuff that took us weeks to do, you can do in 3 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. It is amazing what they've come out with. I guess in these more recent years, but
Right, right. Yeah, like I said, the old technology, you just had a blank screen and waypoints on it. So we put waypoints around the arm of Chambers or Horseshoe Reef or something like that, right? And you knew there was a 1 foot hump, but you didn't know exactly if you nailed it, with your compass and your walking ruler. You know what I mean?
yeah.
How you have to figure out waypoints on a chart.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
No, that's
so
amazing. And you said you were primarily fishing with your brother-in-law throughout these tournaments. Did you guys kind of have specific roles? Was one of you doing the mapping and charting while the other was driving, or how did that relationship work, and how did you guys kind of make it up?
we basically I was the captain, and we had another group of friends that we worked with, and we all got together and did the charting, and then put the waypoints in as wrote them down, and then put them in the unit, and then went to them, and then we'd separate the lake up a little bit so we could try different things. We each ended up having favorite spots that weren't the same.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that happens between fishermen. So you guys would mostly do the charting and mapping before going out on the water, it sounds like.
Correct.
And from there,
Correct.
I could pick the
Yeah.
destinations to prioritize.
Right.
For these tournaments, how long did they last? Were they multiple days, or did you go out, at sunlight, come back in, and I guess what was the um, winner's scale based off? Was it weight, size, length, numbers?
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting question because that's a dynamic that's really changing in the tournament circuits now. Some of them still bring in fish, and there are 1 day tournaments and 2 day tournaments. I have a preference to 2 day because anybody can get lucky for a day, but it takes a skilled fisherman to bring them in 2 days,
Right.
right? But then you do some tournaments are still the old fashioned way where you bring them in and they're based off the total weight of the tournament, following state guidelines or state rules. Like Wisconsin, there is no culling, but in Minnesota and Michigan and Ohio, you can cull. So you can just keep. You don't have as many decisions to make in those states. Where in Wisconsin, if you get a 26-inch fish and you're thinking, okay, through history, I'm going to guess 65 pounds won this tournament. 26-inch fish isn't going to help us. We need to let this go and catch a bigger one.
Right. Yeah,
So,
so I'm sure there's bag limits. So I guess how difficult was it to decide, whether a fish was worth keeping and holding a spot within that limit? Was it typically based off, the day, how it was going, or was there a certain
right. Oh, and
that you guys would cut off at?
right. You're exactly right. It could be the weather. I mean, if it's a second day of a cold front, you're thankful to catch 5 walleyes.
Right.
First day you can usually catch them. The second day of a cold front, if you catch 5 walleyes, you don't let anything go. Big wind change or something on your spot causes the fish to readjust or move out completely. So those are all things that help as far as a captain too. Last year on Green Bay, we had a lot of west wind, and it brought a lot of cold water through the Rock Island Passage up above. Then the currents carried it down to the west shore of Green Bay, and the west winds blew it across. So some days you'd be fishing and it'd be 70-degree water temps and everything's perfect and you're catching fish like crazy. The next day you take the same group of guys out, you get there and you look at your temp gauge and you're like, holy cow, it's 58 degrees. We got to go somewhere else. You could see it dropping as you go, and then basically what you're doing is you're searching for that warm water, and as soon as you find it, it's like your graphs on Simulate. They'll be right back there again.
That's amazing. And I'm sure, stuff like that as far as weather patterns, it's almost as if, did you feel like you had an advantage because you had grown up in the area and fishing these waters, opposed to some of the other fishermen, or did everybody kind of seem to be local and pretty familiar with it?
No, I learned a lot from young guys on that.
Yeah,
That whole computer thing and NOAA modules that they put out and stuff. Really paying attention to that is what helps.
yeah.
So,
Well, that's awesome that somebody's been in doing it for so long. You like yourself can obviously still learn from some of the younger guys, and there's always more to learn in this industry. So
right, exactly.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about, I guess, at what point. Obviously, you're a competitive fisherman for 25 years. I'm sure just a conventional fisherman before that. At what point did you want to become, a guide and actually start passing on some of these skills that you've learned throughout your years in the industry?
Well, I had thought of doing it probably 20 years ago, but in a relationship I was in, she didn't want me to guide because I was gone too much the way it was. But I think what really attracts me to it is the fact that I enjoy catching fish and I enjoy catching big walleyes, and I wanted to share that with people. I really, getting out on Green Bay and somebody getting their personal best, and they're saying that's the biggest walleye I ever caught, and as a captain, you learn to respect your client because they haven't had the opportunities you have. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like some personal best for some might be 26 or 27 inches, and you can't just say, "Oh, that's a common walleye here." You have to, hey, that is great. But when they get there, I've had several guys last year to like 30, 31 inch fish. They were really, really ecstatic about it. you
Yeah,
know.
that's an amazing walleye. Um, and as a captain, I guess what are some of these qualities that you've recognized, such as respecting a client, that have kind of makes your captain experience taken to the next level?
Um, I think that having your clients participate in everything that you're doing so they understand what you're doing. I think that's big for me, right? So it's not just here, take this, cast it over there, or um, I'll take care of this, and you just reel it in or whatever. No, I want them to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. That brings a lot of satisfaction to me, especially when they you can see the little light bulb go on in their head when it starts working.
Right, right. And I'd seen it. So I had guided actually a couple years back in Colorado, fly fishing, but I've started to recognize just exactly what you started to say. Is it's not always about just putting your clients on fish. It's about the learning experience and actually educating them, on why you're doing certain things, on why you're using certain patterns, um, and actually giving them the ability and knowledge to go out and almost do it on their own afterwards. I've
Exactly.
seen it's something that clients respect more than catching a fish almost.
Right. Exactly. And if they can go out and do it on their own, I have people that I have worked with that I take out fishing, and he still comes. He has his own rig, and he goes out fishing. But once a year, he wants to come with me and just pick up on new things. So
Yeah, yeah. There's always more to learn. That's for sure. So I guess throughout being a guide, what have you found is most successful as far as happy clients, repeat clients? What do you look for, I guess, when you're doing some of the marketing for your business, and how have you kind of established your name in the industry?
um, I guess I do a lot of seminars with Cabela's.
Okay,
With Cabela's uh, on their pro team in the Green Bay store. So I'll do seminars, a lot of work with children, and I think that's doing those things is another way of marketing myself, right? Not just out on the water, but caring about the community. I give a lot of trips away for handicapped children, wounded veterans, free. Just let's go and have a fun day, right?
right. It's amazing. What are these seminars normally consist of? Is it up there you talking to organizations and of these children or veterans or whatever it may be?
I've done fishing club seminars. I've done seminars at Cabela's when they have an open house. Different walleye techniques on Green Bay. A lot of times people will be not even from Green Bay and they'll be in a different area and they say, "Hey, you said you fished here. What did you do?" I met a fellow that fished the Illinois River, and I was talking, made a comment about the Illinois, and he goes, "Really? How did you do that? I mean, how did you figure that out?" And I'm like, "Well, you have to look at their bait source. You know that Asian carp is a major bait source of the saugers in the Illinois River. So you try to mimic that. You don't try to mimic a a chub or something like that, right? You have to look at what their bait source is and look at what the young of the year is and mimic that, and that's how you catch them. So
Right.
it's not just I've not at seminars. It's not been just Green Bay or right. It's been wherever they're from. They ask questions about what technique would you try here.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's amazing that you're able to provide that knowledge on even some of these areas that aren't necessarily your home waters. Um, do you start to see kind of patterns as far as specific to walleye or species of fish? And it doesn't really matter based off the territory that they're in, but some patterns are there kind of statewide.
Um, that's tough because it took me a while to pick this up, but because I grew up fishing Lake Winnebago and Green Bay, and in both situations the fish suspend. You know, Great Lakes fish suspend a lot. Lake Winnebago fish suspend a lot. So it took me a while to figure out, holy cow, walleyes do like the bottom of the lake. So I guess that to me is, where you really gotta, that if you're going around fishing a reservoir, you have to look at the time of year, early season in reservoirs. Like I think there's a Masters Walleye circuit on Lake Petenwall, which is a Wisconsin River reservoir. In a week, I'd certainly be fishing about 3 or 4 feet of water because reservoirs, walleyes go shallow early in the year.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Is there a reason that's true?
That's where like walleye spawn early, right? And then as the temperature rises, the shallow water gets warmer quicker, and that's where the bait fish head, and they're going in the shallow water to spawn. It's sort of like a natural Mother Nature thing, right?
Yeah, interesting. Have you always been primarily a walleye, or do you guide for other species like northern pike, muskie, anything like that?
No, but we do catch them
You do
when we're
catch.
fishing. Yeah, yes. We do. Muskies on Green Bay are just about everywhere, and I've had clients catching muskies and saying, "We weren't planning on this, but what a great time." But myself, I'm addicted to walleyes, so I mean, my nephew loves to fish smallmouth, so we'll go up to Door County and cast for smallmouth when he's in San Francisco, so when he comes back, I'll go back. We'll go out and cast for smallies or something, but
Yeah.
I'm primarily a walleye guy.
I guess what is it that walleyes? What is it about walleyes that makes you so passionate about them? Absolutely love it. Um,
Well, you know why God created bass, right?
why?
That's for people who can't catch walleyes.
That's amazing.
I guess it's the mystique in this area of a walleye and how difficult they are to catch. You know, um, just things change. A bass eats everything. A walleye, sometimes you have to tickle him to get it to eat. Right?
Right.
I guess that's what I like about it. Just the challenge of figuring it out.
Yeah, they make you earn it. Um, make you earn catching them, and makes it that much better payoff when you do. How is it that you kind of present that to your clients? Are a lot of your clients that book with you, wanting to target walleye? Do they know a lot about the fish or the fishery that you guys are fishing on? Um,
No, they
yeah,
count on me for that. They, 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 how do I say it? They enjoy walleye. Walleye is a feast as far as the fish go. So they do realize how good they taste, but they rely on me. Sometimes fishing's tough in areas, and I'll take them to a different lake and fish just so we can.
pull fish out.
Yeah,
Right. Do you find a lot of your clients are first timers, or do they typically have some sort of experience with fishing, um, or
I
they're more
think I think
wildlife?
lately there's been more repeat customers that want to come every year. Um, I've had a lot of customers say for me to buy a boat, to buy all the equipment, to pay for everything, and then come up here and fish 3 or 4 times a year. I'd rather come and fish with you twice a year. You know where the fish are, and I won't even know where the fish are at that time.
Right.
So I think a lot of the customers now are aware of what Green Bay is. I think a lot of these big walleye tournaments have been consistently coming to Green Bay, and they have television programs and they show the large walleye catch that happens right
Right.
during the tournament.
Right. And it kind of attracts people. Is there a lot of out of state clients that you find, or are they mostly from within Wisconsin, Great Lakes area?
I think I think the majority of my clients are from out of state. I've had them as far south as Florida. I think in 2 weeks I have somebody from Alabama coming up to fish. So
Oh, wow.
they're all over the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen any sort of patterns in clients from certain states? Maybe they already have some sort of preconceived notion on, how to fish versus others.
Right. Yeah, you see a lot from Iowa. I think Iowa has a lot of outdoorsmen, and
Okay.
I think they enjoy walleye fishing in the Green Bay area or Lake Winnebago area. So I see a lot of repeat customers, a lot of customers from Iowa coming
Wow.
up here in Missouri.
Yeah. That was a great area. Have you been out there to fish at all?
Uh, um, Trying to think. No, I've never been to Iowa. Well, Mississippi.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I haven't quite been out there to do some fishing yet, but I've heard that it's pretty good down there. There's a lot of
Yeah,
outdoor.
like Western Iowa is supposed to be really good for I think they have a like Glacier Lake area. They share with South Dakota, and I've heard that that's really good walleye fishing out there.
Huh, interesting. Well, I'd like to talk about a little bit. Obviously, COVID had a lot of different impacts on people in the industry. Um, I just would like to hear a little bit how that impacted your business and what you kind of did to adapt with that um, to keep the ball rolling. I know it helped out some and it hurt some. So how were you
Unfortunately,
able to adapt your business for that?
yeah, unfortunately, living in Wisconsin, we didn't have none of the mask mandates or the uh, whatever, what do they call it, stay in place or whatever. None of that stuck. So the other part that helped was we did an ad campaign on a radio station, and it really drew a lot of people from the southern part of the state because they usually went to Canada and Canada's border was closed. They thought they'd try something different. So then they signed up and they really enjoyed it. So it's been a great way to get new customers. It worked well for us.
Right. And that's kind of what we've seen in the fly fishing industry, at least. We saw a lot of people were almost pushed to be outdoors more often post the pandemic, and it's actually, in certain ways, helped the industry grow a little bit through numbers of, as far as new people getting into the fishing industry and wanting to be outdoors. And it sounds like you kind of had that same experience up there.
I would agree with that 100%. Yes.
Did you see any sort of rise in competitions as far as more people becoming guides?
Yeah, yeah, I have noticed that. And I think that younger guys want the bigger boats. So naturally to afford them, they have to guide. So, a lot of part-time guides out there right now.
Right. How has it been, you know, competing against some of these newer guides versus maybe some of the more established competitors, and kind of what do you do differently from them, um, or what do you say about your business, that makes you a little bit different from your competitors?
Well, I would say that I have a well-established group of guides that I work with, and we share information together. Like frequently, we call each other, "How'd you do today? Where were you?" And they're willing to share that information with each other. Where a lot of these young guys are just going to community holes, where the fish should be. And if something happens, if the wind changes, temperature drops, something changes, they can't adapt, and we're capable of adapting. I think that's working with some of the guys that have been in the business for 10, 15, 20 years.
Right, and that's actually a very interesting topic. I haven't quite thought about it that way, but it's almost like through this experience and through some of these relationships that you've gained throughout fishing in the industry, you guys have kind of learned it's better to work together as guides, help each other out, um, and it just increases the quality overall of your guide trips.
Correct. Yes. And it brings because those people are going to tell three people, and the people I have are going to tell three people, and suddenly it's a way for everyone to grow the business, not just one particular person, because they won't all book with me. I might be booked up, and I'll suggest, hey, um, exclusive walleye is looking for someone right now. Uh, Check with Mike. He might have an opening for you. So
Yeah.
we all scratch each other's back that way.
No, I love that. And I think it's extremely important. A lot of, like you said, the newer guides can, be extremely secretive and try to, whether it's with spots or with clients, they think it's almost like them versus the other guides. But it's extremely important to realize in the industry that, hey, we're all in the same business here. We all share the same passion. Let's actually help each other out, share the business, um, and overall it'll just improve our quality of trips and time in the industry.
Yes, yes, I agree.
Amazing. So I guess let's see. Do you have any sort of advice to, some of these newer guys that are coming on, or anyone who's, obviously shares the passion for walleye fishing or any type of fishing and are looking to start their own guide service or, start establishing a name for themselves within the industry?
Well, I think the biggest thing I can, the biggest piece of advice I can give is just go out and enjoy yourself. Because when you're in a good mood, you fish better. When you're positive, you fish better. Your clients are happier. It's I haven't had too many 0 days, and when I do, it's um, not a complete zero. How's that? Catch muskies or bass or something else, right? And then I always say to them, if you want to come back again, just give me a call.
Right.
We'll work something out.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned that when we first started that how important it is for the captain's attitude, and how that typically influences the trip, right?
Right. It really makes the day, and I think you have to look at your customers and say, okay, this one just wants to pick up the rod and reel the fish in. This one wants to learn something. Try to be quiet in the boat and listen to what they want, right? And then give them what they want.
Right. That's extremely important because there are definitely different types of clients, like you said. Some just want to pick up the rod and cast it, and some want to learn why you're doing every other thing that you're doing.
Right.
It's extremely important for a captain or a guide to be able to pick up on that and then satisfy those needs and wants of those clients.
Right. Because they're going to leave happy.
Right. And you can have amazing days out on the water and barely catch any fish.
Right. Right.
I've seen that a lot of these people book, obviously to have a good time, but to make friends in the industry because they care about it so much. And, your relationship with a client goes much further past just fishing in a way. It's a lot about people relationships and
You are so right there, because I have clients that text and call me, or I'll text and call them 5, 6 times a year just to see them all.
right, right. And that's the beautiful part of it. Um, Amazing. Well, I guess last couple of things I'd like to touch on. We talked a little bit already about, marketing and establishing your name. Um, as far as gaining this, you said you work with Cabela's there in Wisconsin. As far as
Yes.
advice for some of the newer guys or someone looking to grow, um, what's the best way about maybe reaching out to some of these companies or marketing themselves in order to gain um, some sort of sponsorship like you have with Cabela's?
I think one of the biggest reasons I had an opportunity at Cabela's was because I was willing to help people and not tell them how good I was.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. Young kids are worried about showing people how good they are instead of just saying, I want to help people learn, right?
Right. The more you give, the more you get, typically,
Yes,
in all
yes,
things of life. So
yes.
through being humble, it sounds like, and being giving, uh, good things will come. People will recognize that.
Doesn't
And
mean you don't work hard. You do. Just that you work hard to make sure when you learn something, you share it with someone,
right.
right?
And you obviously mentioned that you work a little bit with kids and some of these veterans. Can you expand a little bit more on that and kind of tell us exactly what you do for them, and how you
Okay.
got to that?
Okay. So I'm sure you've heard of Mission 22, right?
Right.
Yeah. So they have a local walk here in Kimberly, and I donated a guide trip to that to raise funds for them. And then I also have helped with the suicide hotline for veterans. So the with the suicide hotline, I have one of the fellows that's involved in that will just give me a call and say, "Hey, I got somebody I really need to get out fishing. Needs to get his mind off of things. Okay, I have this day available. You want to go?" He's absolutely, let's do it. So I think that to me, fishing is brings someone a little peace in their mind. It's a little connection with nature. Always brings peace within your soul, right?
100%. And it's so important to be able to provide that opportunity to people like that. So that's a great thing that you're doing there, Butch. Um, and I know it means so much to a lot of those veterans here indeed at the time. Let's end it with a crazy fish story, whether it was yourself or a client. Doesn't have to be big, but just some sort of memorable experience that you've had out on the water.
Oh, first one that popped into my head. I have a repeat customer. His name is Don, and his wife comes out, and she gets motion sickness. And the very first trip we're out together, it was supposed to be very light winds, and they were supposed to be south. Well, they were northeast, and on Green Bay, a northeast wind comes about 120 miles from there. So it was pretty rough, and she wasn't feeling well. She reeled the first fish in, and that was all she did. And I guess what made it so memorable was like the light shined on us because we caught a 10 fish limit. She would not go in. Ex-military, right? She would not, and she would not give up. She stayed out there and suffered. And Don reeled the rest of the fish in, and it was like a blessing because we were back at the ramp. We left at 7 o'clock. We were back at the ramp at 9 o'clock with a limit of fish, and they had a great time.
Oh,
so like, yeah, so that's one of the like you think of little things that happen that you never think of. So if clients too, they have to remember if they have any motion sickness at all, take some Dramamine beforehand.
That's a pro tip right there. That's amazing. It's been a great time talking with you, Butch, getting to know you a little bit more. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
You as well, Seth.
And some of your tips and tricks that you've learned through your many years in the industry. So